Everyone called me crazy for hiring security for my wedding, until my sister-in-law arrived in a wedding dress more expensive than mine. My maid of honor slammed the bridal suite door so hard the mirror rattled. She actually did it, Rachel said, breathless like she'd sprinted up the stairs. She's outside in a floor-length white lace gown with a veil fascinator. I set down my lipstick. For a second, I just stared at her reflection behind mine. Then I walked to the window and looked down at the courtyard entrance. There she was, Trisha. White lace from shoulders to ankles, fitted bodice, full skirt, and perched in her hair like some deranged accessory was a fascinator with netting that could pass for bridal veiling if you squinted. She stood beside a guy in a gray suit who looked like he was reconsidering every choice that led him here. Guests milled around the courtyard in pastels and florals, heads turning, phones coming out. She saw them looking and smiled. "Tell security," I said. Rachel pulled out her phone. 2 minutes later, I watched the guards approach. They were exactly what I'd paid for. Discreet guys in black suits who looked like they belonged at any upscale event. One of them said something to Trisha. She cocked her head, still smiling. He said something else and gestured toward the parking area. Her smile vanished. The courtyard went quiet enough that I could hear her voice through the closed window, shrill and rising. "This is discrimination. I'm family. You can't ban someone for what they're wearing." The guard didn't move, just kept his hands folded, expression blank, while she escalated. Her +1 touched her elbow and she shook him off. Guests stopped pretending not to stare. 200 people formed a loose semicircle, phones up, recording. "This is insane," Trisha shouted. "My brother is getting married and his psycho fiancé is having me thrown out for wearing the wrong color." The guard said something I couldn't hear. She jabbed a finger at his chest. He didn't flinch. Then my fiancé appeared at the edge of the crowd. He'd been inside getting final photos with the groomsmen. He walked over in his tuxedo, brow furrowed like he thought someone had gotten hurt. He reached the guards and looked at his sister. His face changed. Confusion first. Then his jaw tightened and his eyes went flat and cold. I'd never seen him look at anyone like that, let alone family. He stared at the white dress, the veil fascinator, the full bridal cosplay she'd assembled for his wedding day. "Are you serious right now?" His voice carried across the courtyard, low and hard. Trisha's face crumpled into something between outrage and tears. She orchestrated this. She had them waiting for me because she's always hated me, and now she's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. He didn't answer, just looked at the guards and said, "Do what you were hired to do." Then he turned and walked back toward the venue entrance. Didn't look back, didn't wait for her response. Just left her standing there in white lace while the guards moved to either side of her and gestured toward the parking lot. She started crying, loud theatrical sobs that sounded like a child being dragged out of a toy store. Her +1 mumbled something apologetic to the guards and followed her as they escorted her across the courtyard toward the lot. Guests parted to let them through. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked satisfied. Rachel leaned against the window beside me. That was the coldest thing I've ever seen him do. I watched Trisha stumble in her heels, mascara streaking, while 200 wedding guests watched her exit in the dress she'd worn specifically to ruin this day. The guards stayed with her until she reached her car. She got in, slammed the door, and peeled out of the lot fast enough to kick up gravel. The courtyard stayed quiet for another moment. Then someone laughed. Then someone else. Then the whole space filled with relieved chatter and the sound of people putting their phones away. I stepped back from the window and picked up my lipstick again. My hands were steady. Rachel grinned at me in the mirror. "30 minutes until you walk," she said. I smiled. "Then we better get moving." The ceremony coordinator knocked twice before opening the door. "We're holding at 25 minutes. Do you need more time?" I shook my head. "We're good." She nodded and left. Rachel was fixing a loose curl near my temple when footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, quick and uneven. The door opened again and my fiancé walked in, still in his tuxedo, face flushed like he'd been moving fast. "I'm sorry," he said. Rachel glanced at me, then slipped out without a word and closed the door behind her. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. "You were right, about all of it. I thought she was just being dramatic, doing the whole jealous sister thing, but I didn't think she'd actually show up dressed like that. I didn't think she'd go that far." I sat down on the settee near the window. My dress pooled around me in layers of ivory silk. "I told you what she posted. The white dresses, the caption, all of it. You said I was overreacting." "I know." He crossed the room and crouched in front of me so we were eye level. I wanted to believe she wouldn't actually do it, that she'd complain and make comments, but when it came down to it, she'd respect the day. I was wrong. Through the window I could still see guests clustered in small groups, heads bent together, phones out. Some were laughing, others looked uncomfortable, like they'd just witnessed a family implosion and weren't sure which side to take. "She wore a veil," I said. "Not just white, a veil fascinator. She dressed like a bride and showed up to your wedding." He sat back on his heels. "I saw. Everyone saw. And you still thought I was being paranoid when I hired security." I was trying to keep the peace. I thought if I just ignored her comments and let her blow off steam, she'd get over it. I didn't realize how deep it went. He reached for my hand. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't trust your instincts. I should have backed you up from the start." I looked down at our hands. His thumb traced the edge of my engagement ring. "What happens now? Now she's gone, and she's not coming back unless she earns it." His voice was flat, decided. "I don't care if she's my sister. You don't get to sabotage someone's wedding and then play victim." The door opened again and Rachel poked her head in. "Your mom's looking for you. Says it's urgent." He stood. "I'll be right back." I watched him leave, then turned to Rachel. "What are people saying out there?" She came in and closed the door. "Honestly, most of them are on your side. A bunch of your cousins are in the bathroom pulling up her Instagram post from last week, the one with the white dresses. Someone found screenshots before she deleted it. And your aunt keeps saying she knew Trisha was trouble from the engagement party when she spent the whole night talking about how her brother's ex was so good with kids. Anyone defending her?" Her +1 tried for like 2 minutes, said she told him it was a cultural thing, that wearing white was some family tradition. Then someone showed him a photo of their parents' wedding where the guests are all in jewel tones and he went quiet real fast. Pretty sure he left. I stood and smoothed the front of my dress. How much time do we have? 15 minutes. Coordinator says we're still on schedule if you're ready. I walked to the mirror and checked my makeup. The lipstick had stayed perfect. No smudges, no tears. I looked exactly like I'd planned to look. Rachel stood behind me. You okay? I'm fine. You sure? Because your fiancé's sister just got escorted out of your wedding in a white dress and the whole thing's probably gonna end up on Reddit by tonight. I smiled at her reflection. Good. Let it. She wanted attention and now she's got it. Just not the kind she was hoping for. Downstairs, the music shifted. Prelude starting. Guests filing into the ceremony space. I could hear the soft shuffle of 200 people finding their seats, the rustle of programs, the low hum of whispered conversation that would cut off the second I appeared. My fiancé came back in. My mom's downstairs. She wants to talk to you after the ceremony. About what? She didn't say, but she's furious. I've never seen her this angry. He paused. She's also really sorry. Said she should have stepped in months ago when Trisha started making those comments about you not being family-oriented enough. Rachel handed me my bouquet. White roses and eucalyptus, tied with ivory ribbon. The stems were cool against my palms. 5 minutes! The coordinator called from the hallway. My fiancé kissed my cheek, careful not to disturb my makeup. See you down there. He left. Rachel adjusted my veil one last time, fluffing the edges so it fell in soft layers down my back. Nothing like Trisha's fascinator. This was cathedral length, silk tulle, custom embroidered with my initials along the hem. Ready? Rachel asked. I looked at myself one more time. The dress fit perfectly. Hair elegant and secure, makeup flawless, bouquet balanced and beautiful. Outside the window, the courtyard was empty now, everyone inside waiting. Somewhere out there, Trisha was sitting in her car in a white dress, mascara ruined, scrolling through angry texts from family members who'd just watched her crash and burn in real time. I turned away from the mirror. Let's go. The walk down the aisle felt longer than I'd imagined. Every face turned toward me, 200 guests standing in unison, and I could see it in their expressions. The ones who'd been outside knew exactly what had just happened. The ones who'd arrived early and missed the spectacle were leaning toward their neighbors, whispering questions that got answered with widened eyes and barely suppressed grins. My father's arm was steady under mine. He squeezed my hand once as we passed the third row, where my fiancé's aunt was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and I couldn't tell if she was crying from emotion or the sheer absurdity of what she'd just witnessed. At the altar, my fiancé was waiting with his hands clasped in front of him, expression calm, but eyes bright with something between relief and residual anger. When I reached him and my father stepped back, he mouthed, "You look perfect," and I believed him because I did. The dress was flawless. The veil caught the light streaming through the tall windows. Everything was exactly as I'd planned, and the fact that his sister had tried to compete made my entrance feel like a victory lap instead of just a ceremony. The officiant started talking about love and commitment, but I could feel the energy in the room, charged, expectant, like everyone was waiting to see if something else would go wrong. It didn't. The vows went smoothly. The rings slid on without fumbling. When he kissed me, the applause was louder than I'd expected, almost defiant, like the guests were making a point about whose side they were on. We walked back down the aisle together, and I caught sight of his mother in the front row, standing with her hands pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking. His father had an arm around her, but he was watching us with this expression of fierce approval, nodding slightly as we passed. The receiving line formed outside the ceremony space while staff flipped the room for the reception. Guests filed past offering congratulations that felt layered with unspoken commentary. My college roommate hugged me and whispered, "I can't believe she actually tried it." And I just smiled and said, "Neither can I." His cousin approached, a woman in her 50s I'd only met twice before at family gatherings. She took both my hands and held them firmly. "I need to tell you something. Trisha pulled this same stunt at my daughter's sweet 16, showed up in a dress nearly identical to the birthday girl's and spent the whole party positioning herself in photos like she was the guest of honor. We didn't have security to remove her, so she just ruined half the pictures. What you did today, setting that boundary, it's what someone should have done years ago." I thanked her, and she moved on, but she wasn't the last. Over the next 20 minutes, 3 more relatives stopped to share their own stories. Trisha crashing her brother's college graduation party and making a scene when she wasn't included in photos with his friends. Trisha announcing her engagement at their grandmother's funeral reception. Trisha throwing a tantrum at Christmas because someone else got more gifts than her, even though she was 28 years old at the time. Each story added another layer, a pattern so consistent it stopped being shocking and started feeling almost pathetic. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was who she'd always been, and the family had spent decades quietly managing her, redirecting her, trying to minimize damage instead of actually addressing the problem. Rachel appeared at my elbow with a glass of champagne. "Your mother-in-law wants to talk to you before the reception starts. She's in the coordinator's office." I found her sitting in a chair near the window, hands folded in her lap, eyes red but makeup intact. When I walked in, she stood immediately. "I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I should have said something months ago when she started making those comments about you. I thought if I ignored it, she'd stop. I thought she'd grow out of it. But she's 32 years old and she's still acting like a child who can't handle not being the center of attention." I sat down across from her. "It's not your fault she wore a white dress to someone else's wedding." "No, but it's my fault I didn't prepare you for how she operates. I've been making excuses for her since she was a teenager. Every time she did something inappropriate, I told myself it was just a phase, just insecurity, just her way of coping with not being the oldest or the youngest. I enabled it by not calling it what it was." She looked straight at me. "You did the right thing today, having her removed, setting that boundary. If we'd let her stay, she would have spent the entire reception making everything about her, and you would have spent your wedding managing her tantrums." Through the window, I could see guests mingling in the courtyard, drinks in hand, laughing and talking in clusters. The energy felt light, celebratory, no dark cloud hovering. "She's been texting family members," her mother continued, "demanding they condemn you, insisting she has a right to be here because it's her brother's wedding. My sister sent me screenshots. Trisha's saying you humiliated her on purpose, that you're trying to turn the family against her. What What are people saying back? Most of them aren't responding. The ones who are have been pretty blunt. Her uncle told her, "You wore a white dress with a veil. What did you expect?" Her grandmother said, "You made your bed. Now lie in it." Nobody's defending her. The door opened and my new father-in-law stepped in, still in his tuxedo, expression serious. He looked at his wife, then at me. "I just had a conversation with our son," he said. "Told him that what you did today, hiring security, following through with removal, that took guts. A lot of people would have caved, let her stay to keep the peace, spent their wedding day miserable because they were too afraid of looking like the bad guy." He crossed his arms. "Trisha's been pulling stunts like this since she was 16. We've been managing her, accommodating her, trying to keep her happy so she wouldn't throw fits. It never worked. She just escalated. What she needed was someone who wouldn't bend, and that's what she got today." His wife reached for his hand. They stood there together, this united front, and I realized they were relieved. They'd been waiting for someone to finally draw a line their daughter couldn't cross, and I'd done it. "She's texting me now," he said, glancing at his phone. "Says she's sitting in her car and she wants to be let back in for the reception. Says it's not fair to exclude her from the whole event just because of one outfit choice." "One outfit choice?" his wife repeated, voice flat. "She's calling it one outfit choice." I stood and smoothed my dress. "She's not coming back in. Not today. If she wants to repair things with her brother, that's between them. But this is my wedding, and I'm not spending my reception dealing with someone who showed up dressed like a competing bride." He nodded. "Good. That's the right call." Rachel appeared in the doorway. "They're ready to announce you for the reception entrance." I followed her out, leaving my in-laws in the office. In the hallway, I could hear music starting. The DJ announcing that dinner service would begin shortly. Guests finding their seats at tables decorated with centerpieces I'd spent months selecting. My husband was waiting near the entrance to the reception hall, jacket unbuttoned, tie slightly loosened, looking more relaxed than he had all day. When he saw me, he smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "My dad said you stood your ground. Your whole family's been apologizing to me for the last half hour. They should be. They've been covering for her for years." He offered his arm. "Ready to go enjoy the party we actually planned?" The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time as a married couple." We walked through the doors together into applause and cheers, and I looked out at the room full of people who'd chosen to celebrate with us instead of defending someone who'd tried to sabotage the whole day. The tables were full. The dance floor was clear and waiting. Everything looked exactly right. Trisha was still sitting in her car somewhere in the parking lot, white dress wrinkled, makeup ruined, phone full of messages from family members who'd finally stopped making excuses for her. And I was walking into my reception as an actual bride, not a supporting character in someone else's desperate bid for attention. Dinner service started with the salad course, and I barely tasted it. My husband kept his hand on my knee under the table, thumb tracing slow circles through the fabric of my dress. And every few minutes, someone would approach to offer congratulations that felt less like politeness and more like solidarity. His best man gave the first speech. Standard stuff about college roommates and bad decisions, and how he'd never seen his friend happier than the day he met me. Laughter in the right places. A toast that everyone raised glasses for. My maid of honor went next with stories about our friendship. The day I called her panicking about the first date. The moment I showed her the engagement ring. She kept it light and sweet and ended with, "To a bride who knows exactly what she deserves and doesn't settle for less." The applause was still fading when my mother-in-law stood up. Nobody had announced her. There was no microphone being passed. She just rose from her seat at the head table, glass in hand, and the room went quiet in that sudden way that happens when people sense something unscripted is about to unfold. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," she started, voice steady but loud enough to carry. "But I'm standing here because something needs to be said, and it needs to be said publicly." My husband's hand tightened on my knee. His father was watching his wife with an expression I couldn't quite read. My daughter wore a white dress to this wedding, a white lace gown with a veil fascinator. She showed up dressed like a bride to her own brother's wedding, and when she was asked to leave, she acted like she was the victim. She paused, looking around the room at 200 faces now completely focused on her. Some people can't handle when they're not the center of attention. Some people will sabotage the happiness of others rather than celebrate it, and for too long this family has made excuses for that behavior instead of calling it what it is. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. This wasn't a generic speech about love and marriage. This was a public choosing of sides. I'm grateful my son found someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect, someone who sets boundaries and holds to them even when it's uncomfortable, someone who values her own dignity enough to not let anyone, family included, turn her wedding day into a spectacle. She raised her glass toward me. "Thank you for showing us what it looks like to stand firm. Thank you for not backing down. And I'm sorry it took my daughter's behavior at your wedding for me to finally say out loud what I should have said years ago, that her actions are her responsibility, and this family will no longer make excuses for them." The applause started before she finished sitting down, not polite clapping. Real applause, sustained and loud with several people standing. My uncle was on his feet, my husband's cousins, the family friend who'd told me about the Sweet 16 incident. My husband leaned close and whispered, "I had no idea she was going to do that." Neither did I. But watching his mother sit back down, hands trembling slightly as she set her glass on the table, I understood what it had cost her. She just publicly disowned her daughter's behavior in front of everyone who mattered to their family. There was no walking that back. The DJ transitioned into the first dance, and my husband led me onto the floor. The song was one we'd chosen months ago, something slow and romantic, but I barely heard it over the rushing in my ears. When we turned, I could see his mother watching us, eyes wet but posture straight, and I knew that speech had been building for years, waiting for the right moment to finally break free. The father-daughter dance came next. My dad held me carefully, like I was still small enough to stand on his shoes, and halfway through he said, "That took courage," what his mother did. "She chose you over her own daughter in front of everyone. I didn't ask her to." No, but she needed to. For herself, for her son, maybe even for her daughter, in some twisted way. Maybe public accountability is the only thing left that might actually reach her. Other guests joined the floor, and the energy shifted back toward celebration. My college friends formed a circle and pulled me in, dancing badly on purpose, laughing at nothing. Rachel appeared with another glass of champagne and a warning that the cake cutting was in 15 minutes. I excused myself to the bathroom and checked my phone for the first time since the ceremony. 17 texts. most from friends and relatives sending heart emojis and congratulations. One from my mother saying, "I'm so proud of you." And 3 notifications from Facebook, tags in a post. I opened the app and there it was. Posted 20 minutes ago by Trisha. Banned from my own brother's wedding for wearing the wrong color. Apparently having opinions and a sense of style is a crime now. When family chooses a bridezilla over blood, you know where their priorities are. Heartbroken doesn't even begin to cover it. The post had 60 comments already. I scrolled through them, watching the narrative she'd tried to build get torn apart in real time. Her former college roommate had written, "You wore white. I saw the pictures. Stop lying." One of my husband's cousins posted, "You wore a white lace gown with a veil. Everyone saw it. This isn't about the wrong color. This is about you trying to upstage the actual bride." A family friend uploaded a photo taken in the parking lot before the ceremony. Trisha in full view, white dress unmistakable, veil fascinator perched in her hair like a crown. The caption read, "For anyone confused about what the wrong color means." Another cousin chimed in, "Remember when you wore a white dress to Sarah's sweet 16 and tried to blow out her candles? Remember when you announced your engagement at Grandma's funeral? This is a pattern, not a misunderstanding." The comments kept coming. Relatives, friends of relatives, people I didn't even know weighing in with their own stories about Trisha's behavior at various family events. The post was getting ratioed so hard that her victim narrative was collapsing under the weight of collective testimony. Someone had written, "You're 32 years old and you showed up to your brother's wedding dressed like a competing bride. The only person who should be heartbroken is him." Trisha was responding to some comments, doubling down. "It wasn't white, it was ivory, and the veil was just a hair accessory. People are so dramatic." But every defense just prompted more people to post more photos, more evidence, more firsthand accounts of what they'd actually witnessed. I closed the app and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My makeup was still perfect. The dress still looked flawless. Through the door I could hear music and laughter and the sound of 200 people enjoying a party that had almost been derailed but wasn't. When I returned to the reception, Rachel was waiting near our table with her phone out. "Have you seen her Facebook post? Just read it. It's getting destroyed. Like, I've never seen a comment section turn on someone that fast. Even people who don't know either of you are calling her out." My husband appeared with 2 plates of cake. My aunt just sent me screenshots of my sister's post. Apparently she's trying to rewrite history and it's not going well. We sat down and he pulled up his phone, scrolling through the comments with an expression somewhere between disbelief and grim satisfaction. "She's deleting responses now. Look, half these comments are gone, but people are screenshotting them and reposting. She can't control the narrative when 200 people were actually here." His father stopped by the table, leaning down to speak quietly. "Your sister's melting down online, posting about being victimized. Your mother's getting tagged in it. I know. Let her dig herself deeper. Everyone who was here knows the truth. She's making it worse for herself," his father said. "Every comment she leaves just reminds people what she actually did. She could have stayed quiet and maybe salvaged something in a few months, but instead she's trying to fight a battle she already lost in front of an audience that watched her lose it." The DJ announced the bouquet toss, and I grabbed the flowers from the head table, making my way to the center of the dance floor. A group of single women gathered behind me, laughing and jostling for position. I turned my back and threw the bouquet over my shoulder, hearing the scramble and shriek as someone caught it. When I turned around, my husband's cousin was holding the flowers, grinning wide, and the crowd was cheering like something meaningful had just happened instead of a random toss of plants wrapped in ribbon. The reception rolled on, more dancing, more toasts from guests who'd had just enough champagne to get sentimental. My feet hurt from the heels, but I didn't care. This was exactly what I'd wanted. A celebration that felt joyful and unforced, surrounded by people who'd chosen to show up and support us instead of compete for attention. Around 11, Rachel found me near the dessert table. Trisha deleted the post. It's gone. How long was it up? Maybe 2 hours, but people saved screenshots. It's already being shared in family group chats. I looked across the room at my husband dancing with his mother, both of them laughing at something his father had said. The woman who'd stood up during speeches and publicly drawn a line her daughter couldn't cross. Trisha's post was deleted, but the damage was permanent. 200 witnesses, dozens of comments, photos that proved exactly what she'd done, and how she'd tried to lie about it afterward. She'd wanted attention. She'd gotten it, just not the kind she'd imagined. The honeymoon suite overlooked the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white curtains moving in the breeze from the balcony. My husband was in the shower, and I was sitting cross-legged on the bed in a hotel robe, scrolling through my phone while room service breakfast went cold on the table. Trisha's Facebook post was gone, completely scrubbed from her profile like it had never existed, but the screenshots were everywhere. Someone had created an entire thread in a local wedding planning group. Cautionary tale about family drama. The original post, Trisha's defensive comments, the parking lot photo showing her white dress and veil in full glory. 37 comments from strangers weighing in with their own stories about nightmare in-laws and boundary violations. Another thread in a different group. When playing victim backfires spectacularly. Same screenshots, different audience. More comments about how satisfying it was to watch someone get called out in real time by their entire family. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. She nuked everything. Post is gone, comments are gone, but the internet is forever and people saved everything. I sent back a thumbs up and kept scrolling. My husband emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair dripping. "You're looking at the screenshots again. People are sharing them in wedding groups I'm not even part of. Someone tagged me in one to ask if this was really my sister-in-law." He sat on the edge of the bed. "What did you say?" "Nothing yet. I don't need to. The photos speak for themselves." He reached for his own phone on the nightstand and opened his messages. My dad texted. He wants to talk when we're back from the honeymoon. Says it's about setting expectations for family gatherings going forward. Expectations like what? Like Trisha not being invited to things until she can prove she won't make them about herself. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that's what he meant. He scrolled further. My aunt sent me a message too. Long one. About how she's glad I finally put my foot down because Trisha's been pulling this kind of thing for years and nobody ever stopped her. I set my phone down. "What kind of thing?" She didn't specify, just said, "You know what I mean. Do you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I know she wore white to our cousin Sarah's sweet 16. 2019. I know she announced her engagement at our grandmother's funeral reception. I know she always finds a way to make big moments about herself, but I guess I thought those were isolated incidents, not a pattern. They're a pattern. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. We flew home 3 days later, and the first thing waiting for me was a message request on Instagram from my husband's cousin Emily. We'd met twice before, maybe exchanged 10 words total. Her message was 5 paragraphs long. I don't know if anyone's told you this, but Trisha wore an engagement ring to my engagement party 4 years ago. Not her actual engagement ring, she wasn't engaged. She bought a fake one at a department store and wore it specifically to my party. And when people asked about it, she'd smile and say, maybe soon, like she had some secret boyfriend who was about to propose. She spent the whole night redirecting conversations away from me and my fiancé, and toward herself and this imaginary relationship. When I confronted her later, she said I was being insecure and that she was just having fun. I never got an apology. I just wanted you to know you're not crazy for protecting your day the way you did. She's done this before and she'll do it again unless someone actually stops her. I showed the message to my husband that night while we unpacked suitcases in our apartment. He read it twice, expression darkening with each pass. I didn't know about the fake engagement ring. Did you know about any of this? Some of it. The sweet 16 thing, obviously. The funeral announcement. But I always thought she was just thoughtless or impulsive, not deliberately sabotaging people. There's a difference? I wanted to believe there was. He handed my phone back. I'm calling her. Right now. We're setting boundaries before this goes any further. He didn't call her. He called his parents first, on speaker, and told them he was going no contact with Trisha for 6 months minimum. No family dinners, no holiday gatherings, no text messages or phone calls. Complete separation until she could demonstrate genuine accountability for what she'd done. His mother's voice came through the speaker. 6 months is a long time. She wore a wedding dress to my wedding. She tried to upstage my wife on our actual wedding day. And then she lied about it on Facebook and played victim when people called her out. That's not impulsive. That's calculated. And I'm done pretending it's anything else. His father spoke next. We support whatever boundary you need to set. Your mother and I have been talking, and we realize we've enabled this behavior by making excuses for it. She's 32 years old. She doesn't get a pass anymore just because she's family. Does she know about the no contact? Not yet. We wanted to talk to you first. Make sure we were all on the same page. I'll send her a message. Keep it simple. She doesn't need a detailed explanation. She knows what she did. The call ended, and my husband sat on the couch staring at his phone for a full minute before typing anything. When he finally showed me the draft, it was 3 sentences. I'm taking space from our relationship for the foreseeable future. What you did at my wedding was intentional and hurtful, and I need distance while I figure out what kind of relationship, if any, we can have going forward. Don't contact me. I'll reach out when I'm ready. He hit send before he could second guess it. 2 days later, his aunt called. Different aunt. Not the one who'd messaged about the fake engagement ring. This one lived in another state, and we'd only met her briefly at the wedding. I heard about the no contact boundary, she said. I'm calling because I want you to know this has been coming for a long time, and I'm glad someone finally said enough. My husband put her on speaker. What do you mean it's been coming? Trisha announced she was pregnant at my daughter's baby shower. She wasn't pregnant. She just wanted attention and thought shocking everyone would be funny. When my daughter got upset, Trisha said she was joking and everyone was too sensitive. She never apologized. That was 7 years ago, and my daughter still won't invite her to family events. I didn't know about that because we stopped talking about it. We stopped including her in things, and your parents would ask why, and we'd give vague excuses because it felt wrong to air it out publicly. But watching what she did at your wedding made me realize staying quiet just protects her and punishes everyone else. More stories surfaced over the next few weeks. A cousin who said Trisha had worn a white sundress to her backyard wedding and claimed it was technically cream, not white. A family friend who remembered Trisha bringing a date to someone's anniversary party and spending the whole evening talking loudly about her own relationship problems. Another relative who said Trisha had posted photos from a family funeral on social media with captions about how grief was making her appreciate life, turning someone else's mourning into personal content. Every story followed the same structure. Trisha centering herself, someone getting hurt, no real apology, the family moving on and pretending it hadn't happened. I started keeping a list, not to weaponize it, just to document the pattern that everyone kept describing, but nobody had ever compiled in one place. 15 incidents over 12 years. 15 separate occasions where Trisha had found a way to redirect attention from someone else's milestone back to herself. My husband read the list one night and went quiet for a long time. I knew she was dramatic. I didn't realize she was destructive. There's a difference. Yeah, dramatic is loud and emotional. Destructive is calculated and repetitive. We fell into our new marriage with a strange sense of relief. No texts from Trisha. No surprise visits. No family dinners where we had to navigate her presence and pretend everything was fine. His parents respected the boundary. His siblings didn't push. The space felt clean. One night we were watching television and the security footage came up on my husband's phone. He'd saved the clip from the wedding venue's system. Trisha approaching the entrance in her white dress. Security stepping forward. Her face shifting from confidence to outrage. The escort to the parking lot while guests watched from the courtyard. He played it twice and started laughing. Not mean laughter, just the kind that comes from recognizing how absurd something is in hindsight. She really thought she'd get away with it. She thought you'd defend her. I almost did. If I hadn't seen the dress myself, if you just told me about it later, I might have convinced myself it wasn't that bad, that you were overreacting, that family should get second chances. And now I know the difference between protecting someone and enabling them. And I'm done enabling. He deleted the video after the second viewing. We didn't need it anymore. The point was made. The boundary was set. Trisha could delete her Facebook posts and scrub her online presence, but she couldn't erase what 200 people had witnessed, or what years of family stories had finally confirmed. Some people can't handle not being the center of attention, and some families spend decades making excuses for that instead of drawing lines. We'd drawn ours, in front of everyone, with security footage to prove it. 5 months into the no-contact period, a handwritten letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, thick cream stationery in a square envelope. My husband's name and our address in careful script. No return label. He opened it standing in the kitchen while I chopped vegetables for dinner. I watched his face change as he read. The tension in his jaw softened, his eyebrows pulled together, not in anger but something closer to surprise. It's from Trisha. I set the knife down. What does it say? He didn't answer right away, just kept reading, flipping to the second page. When he finally looked up, his expression was complicated. She's apologizing, actually apologizing. For what specifically? Everything? The dress? The comments before the wedding? The Facebook post? She's naming all of it. He handed me the letter and I wiped my hands on a towel before taking it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, not the rushed scrawl of someone trying to get through an unpleasant task. The first paragraph acknowledged the white dress as intentional sabotage. No softening language, no claims of misunderstanding or accident. Just a direct statement that she had worn it specifically to upstage me and hurt both of us. The second paragraph went further. She wrote that she'd been jealous since the day her brother proposed, because she'd always been the most important woman in his life and couldn't handle being displaced. That she'd spent years resenting anyone who threatened that position and had targeted me from the beginning because she knew the relationship was serious. The third paragraph listed specific examples. The comment about me not being who she'd pictured for him. The comparisons to the ex-girlfriend. The Instagram post with the white dresses and the caption about a big event coming up. She wrote that she'd known exactly what she was doing with that post and had wanted me to see it, to feel anxious, to know she was planning something. The fourth paragraph said that watching the wedding photos circulate online and seeing how happy her brother looked without her there had forced her to confront what her behavior actually cost. That she'd lost a relationship with someone she loved because she couldn't stop making everything about herself. The final paragraph was shorter. She wrote that she didn't expect forgiveness and understood if we never wanted to speak to her again, but that she needed to say it clearly, in writing, so there was no ambiguity. She had sabotaged the wedding on purpose. She had tried to hurt me, and she was sorry. I read it twice and handed it back to my husband. What do you think? He asked. I think it's the most honest thing she's ever said to us. Does that change anything? I don't know yet. We talked about it for 3 days. Whether to respond, what conditions to set if we did, whether an apology, no matter how specific, was enough to justify re-engagement. My husband wrote back on Friday. He didn't show me the draft until it was finished. The letter laid out 3 conditions. Trisha had to apologize to me directly, in person, without him present to mediate. She had to attend family therapy to address the attention-seeking patterns that had defined her behavior for years. And she had to accept that if she ever attempted similar sabotage again, the no contact would become permanent without discussion or appeal. He mailed it Saturday morning. Trisha's response came by email 2 days later. She agreed to all 3 conditions. No negotiation, no complaints about the terms being too harsh. Just a simple message saying she understood and would follow through. 2 weeks later, she showed up at our apartment. My husband had offered to stay, but I'd told him to leave. This apology needed to happen without an audience or a safety net. He kissed my forehead and left for a coffee shop 3 blocks away with instructions to keep his phone on. I answered the door and Trisha was standing in the hallway in jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered. Can I come in? I stepped aside and she walked past me into the living room. She didn't sit, just stood near the couch with her arms crossed like she was holding herself together. I wore that dress to hurt you, she said. I wanted to ruin your wedding day because I was jealous and I couldn't handle the fact that you were becoming the most important person in my brother's life. I knew exactly what I was doing and I'm sorry. She said it looking directly at me. No tears, no dramatic gestures, just the words. I didn't respond right away. Let the silence stretch while I decided whether I believed her. Why now? I finally asked. Why apologize after 5 months? Because I spent 5 months lying to myself about it, telling myself it wasn't that bad, that everyone overreacted, that you orchestrated the whole thing to humiliate me. And then I saw the wedding photos on my cousin's Facebook, and my brother looked so happy. And I wasn't in any of them, and I realized I destroyed something real, because I couldn't stop making everything about myself. You tried to play victim afterward. The Facebook post, the comments. I know. I was trying to control the narrative because I couldn't admit what I'd actually done, but the screenshots made that impossible and I had to face it. Do you understand why I hired security? Because you knew I'd do exactly what I did, and you were right. I sat down on the couch. She stayed standing. I don't forgive you yet, I said. Maybe I will eventually, but not today. I'm not asking you to. And if we let you back into family events, you follow our rules. You don't get to negotiate or complain or make it about yourself. You show up, you behave, and if you cross a line again, you're done. Permanently. I understand. She left 10 minutes later. My husband came home and asked how it went, and I told him it was as good as it could have been. That the apology seemed sincere, but I wasn't ready to trust it yet. Trisha started therapy the following week. My mother-in-law mentioned it at a family dinner a month later, saying Trisha had found a therapist who specialized in narcissistic patterns and was attending weekly sessions. That she'd told her parents she needed help and was tired of sabotaging her own relationships. We didn't see her for another 6 weeks. Then my husband's father had a birthday party, and we agreed to let Trisha attend for 2 hours, supervised. She showed up in dark jeans and a navy blouse. Nothing attention-grabbing. She said hello to both of us and then spent most of the party talking to her grandmother and asking her uncle about his new job. When someone brought up the wedding, she didn't redirect the conversation or make it about herself. Just said she was glad it had been a beautiful day and left it there. I watched her carefully the entire time, looking for signs of performance or manipulation, but she seemed genuinely focused on blending in rather than standing out. My mother-in-law pulled me aside near the end of the party. Thank you, she said. For what? For holding the line. For not letting her get away with it just because she's family. We spent years making excuses and it took someone outside the family to finally say enough. You think she's actually changing? I think she's trying. Whether it sticks or not, I don't know. But at least now she knows there are consequences. Christmas came and Trisha was invited for a limited visit. 3 hours. Dinner only. She brought a gift for both of us. A framed photo of my husband and his siblings from childhood with a card that said, "The wedding I should have celebrated instead of sabotaging." I read the card and felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition that she was putting in effort. We opened the gift together after she left and my husband stared at the photo for a long time. She's never acknowledged it this directly before, he said. Usually when she apologizes, it's vague. I'm sorry if anyone was hurt. This is different. Does that mean you trust her? Not yet, but I'm starting to believe she might actually want to change. Over the next several months, Trisha showed up to family events and kept herself in check. She didn't dominate conversations, friends. She didn't wear attention-grabbing outfits. She asked questions and listened to answers and left early instead of overstaying. At Easter dinner, she mentioned her therapist had helped her realize she used other people's milestones as opportunities to reassert her importance because she was terrified of being forgotten, that the white dress had been a desperate attempt to force her brother to choose between his wife and his sister because she thought making him choose was the only way to matter. My husband asked if she understood why that was destructive, and she said yes, that she'd spent 32 years believing love was a competition and she was just starting to learn it didn't have to be. I didn't offer validation or praise, just nodded and changed the subject. She'd done damage that couldn't be undone with a few months of good behavior, but I could acknowledge the effort without pretending it erased the past. My mother-in-law started inviting both of us to smaller family gatherings, casual dinners, birthday lunches, low-stakes events where Trisha's presence wouldn't dominate. And each time, Trisha showed up and participated without incident. The security footage was still saved on a private drive. I'd moved it there after deleting it from my phone, not because I wanted to hold it over her, but because I needed the reminder that I'd trusted my instincts when everyone told me I was overreacting, that I'd set a boundary so firm it couldn't be ignored or rewritten. I watched it once, months later, on a night when I was second-guessing whether I'd been too harsh. Trisha approaching the entrance in that white dress with the veil fascinator. Security stepping forward, her face shifting from confidence to shock to fury. The escort to the parking lot while 200 guests watched. I closed the video and didn't feel guilty. She'd made a choice. I'd enforced a consequence. And that consequence had created the only circumstance under which she might actually grow. The relationship stayed cautious, conditional, built on clear expectations and the understanding that one more sabotage would end it permanently. But it existed. And that was more than I'd expected 5 months earlier when the handwritten apology first arrived. Some people need to lose everything before they'll change. Trisha had lost access to her brother, her family's automatic defense, and her ability to rewrite her own story. And somewhere in that loss, she'd started becoming someone who might actually be worth knowing. 2 years after the wedding, Trisha showed up to Thanksgiving dinner with a boyfriend she'd been seeing for 4 months. She introduced him to everyone without fanfare, and spent most of the meal asking my sister-in-law about her new teaching position. When someone mentioned wedding anniversaries, she raised her glass to us and said nothing else. I watched her from across the table and felt nothing sharp. No residual anger, no need to monitor her every move, just the distant awareness of someone who'd caused damage and then spent 2 years proving she understood why it mattered. My husband caught my eye and smiled. He knew what I was thinking. Later that night, after everyone left, he pulled up the security footage on his laptop. We hadn't watched it in over a year, but he'd been joking earlier about my wedding intuition, and wanted to see it again. Trisha in the white dress, the veil fascinator, security stepping forward, her face collapsing from confidence to outrage, the slow walk to the parking lot while guests stared. I should have listened, he said. You learned. I really thought you were overreacting. Everyone did, that's why it worked. He closed the laptop and kissed my temple. Best money we ever spent. I thought about the bride I'd been 2 years ago, standing in the bridal suite, watching through the window as the boundary I'd set became real, wondering if enforcing it would fracture the family or cost me my husband's trust. It had cost nothing I valued, and it had taught everyone in that family exactly who I was. Someone who wouldn't tolerate disrespect. Someone who'd remove you from the room before letting you steal her joy. Someone who understood that temporary conflict was always better than permanent resentment. The marriage thrived in that clarity, and the security footage remained my favorite wedding video.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.